Hello, and welcome to another edition of Relatable. I am your host, Stephanie Michele. I'm a very heavy host, Stephanie Michele, today. There's something happening right now that feels very different than anything that I've experienced personally before. I'm a little bit terrified and I'm overwhelmed. There's trauma in every direction that I look. People are in pain. People in Washington, D.C., around the country, and in my local communities. My friends and colleagues have been talking about Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh for weeks now. Last week, things kind of took a different turn. It got personal for many of us, and some of us are starting to talk quietly to each other. And some of us are getting louder on social media in the midst. Normally, I can push stuff down and say, not right now, but last week I experienced something new. After days of pushing it down, being there for friends, listening to the news, and just being around the trauma, I reached a tipping point where I literally just could not take it anymore. In that tipping point, everything became deeply personal to me. I regrettably lashed out at someone that got caught in my crossfire. And in some ways, my Me Too movements are screaming. They're saying, you can't ignore this anymore. And that feels the same, or many of my friends are expressing the same thing. I've grown close to some of these friends in the last days, and we've tried to process things. We're in a very different time in history, I believe. I believe it's crucial. I think there's opportunity for things to get much worse, and I think there's opportunity for things to get better at the same time. I believe that things can only get better when we start to process things personally and at a relationship level and one-on-one conversations. That's where the opportunity is for healing. We cannot depend on the government to help us deal with the high levels of unprocessed trauma right now. And we can't continue to spew our outrage via social media only. That only keeps us in the pain. We're going to need to establish some boundaries to help us with this new norm. Here are a couple of things that I'm considering, and I hope that you will too. I hope this helps. Right now, it's safe to say that everybody's experiencing trauma. All genders are experiencing pain. It's for sure the time to speak personally about this, but my suggestion is to start the conversation privately where there's safety, with a friend or with a therapist. If not with a therapist, it's a good idea to invite someone into a dialogue and warning them a little bit by saying, hey, are you available to talk? I have some heaviness going on right now. Can we talk? Because remember, they're probably experiencing something too. So let's honor that. If you're on the receiving side of that invite, it's totally okay to say, hey, I want to be there for you, but I'm not okay right in this moment. Maybe we set another time. What else is available for you? The other thing that I'm thinking about right now, and I want you to consider, is there's something that happened in the dialogue last week. When Brett Kavanaugh was being questioned about blacking out and drinking too much, he answered some of those questions with, what about you? Questions to the person that was asking that. This seemed inappropriate to me at the time, but now I'm wondering where actions like that exist in our human condition. I believe someone who's inclined to give what about you responses when they believe everything that everyone does that action that's in question. So they're like justifying that, you know, even though it might be wrong, everybody else is doing it, so it can't be that bad, right? This, I believe, is the opportunity, where the most opportunity is. We now have this opportunity to reset what is unjust. And in doing so, this might be hard for some people to think, but the oppressor has to be allowed to speak to. They have to be allowed to safely come forward and question actions and be in dialogue and ask for forgiveness if they can do that. And somehow, different types of folks are going to have to be okay and quiet enough and accept that as part of the process to move forward. It's a dialogue that needs all voices. The other thing that I'm advocating right now is for restorative justice. Restorative justice is an approach to justice where response to a crime is organized in a mediation between the victim and the offender, and sometimes with representatives of a wider community as well. The goal is to negotiate a resolution that is satisfaction for all participants. Last thought, it's more important than ever to let friends and family know that you're there for them. Never underestimate the powers of words like, I love you, I forgive you, and I see you. Joining me in the studio today are two men from the Mankind Project. The Mankind Project offers men a way out of isolation, into community, a healthy sense of power and purpose, and the connection to beauty and responsibility of mature masculinity. There are two men in the studio today, the first being Michael Pierce. Since joining the Mankind Project in 1995, he has participated in nearly 100 new warrior training adventures, the signature program at the Mankind Project. He was certified as a co-leader in 2004 and became a full leader in 2014. His formal education includes a master's degree in communication and psychology. As a therapist, administrator, facilitator, and board member, Michael has worked with adolescents, adult women and men, transitioning military veterans, and state prisoners on their path to recovery and personal growth. In all of his work, Michael embraces a heart-centered focus and collaborative approach with his clients and other facilitators. Also joining me is Steve Harper. He has been a member of the Mankind Project since he attended the new warrior training adventure in his native New York in 2005. He has participated in 40 Mankind Project weekends throughout the country and has been certified co-leader in the organization since 2015. Outside of the Mankind Project, Steve is a creative coach helping writers and artists find their mojo. He also works in TV as a TV writer, a playwright, and an actor. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for all that.
Yeah. Your bios were a lot easier for me to read than what I had to say. I'm like, oh, bios, I can do this. So I always ask guests that are, coming here to like be in a dialogue with, together. Is there anything that's coming up for you? Because I just got to rant and kind of let out what's kind of heavy on my plate right now. What's coming up for you before we start our conversation?
Well, one of the things that I'm really struck by that I really, that feels like it dovetails with what the Mankind Project is all about is the notion of communication and connection and breaking out of isolation.
Yeah.
And I feel like in my life, and I think in the lives of all the people I know, but specifically in the Mankind Project, the lives of the men I know who step into this work, there's a real sense of opportunity about how it is we reach across to each other.
Yeah.
I think that as a whole, from what I see, and I don't have any statistics, but lots of men I know are isolated, don't have friends, they don't connect. The subjects are like, sports or sex or politics, but not about personal stuff.
Yeah.
Not about what's going on in my heart. Where am I? What am I afraid of? What am I joyful about? What am I angry about? And I think, the kind of work that we get to do, that I'm really grateful to do with the Mankind Project, is really about exploring those things, in circles of men, and also, connecting one-to-one. And I feel like I've had the opportunity to, with lots of men over the period of time that I've been in MKP, but also specifically with this guy, to make a real connection and to be able to speak to the things that are going on with me. And I feel like I don't know that my brother has that. I don't know that my father has that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of revolutionary in a way.
Yeah. Great points. A lot of that for me too, and also following your lead in. I don't know if there's ever a time that's not tumultuous, that's not stressful, where the boundaries between men and women, and it's ongoing. And certainly in the last couple weeks, that's intensified. And I think the nature of the world that we're in today, social media and news coverage, electronic world, it's hard to get away from it.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, and I find myself, I wonder, do I need to pay attention to that story right now? Because if I get wrapped up in this, I can't go in the next room and do what I'm scheduled to do. And I struggle with that because I want to pay attention. I want to be conscious, and that's one thing that 23 years ago when I started working with MKP, I became more conscious and aware of what had previously been unconscious for me. So like, nice to be awake and also to tune into the opinions of others and have my bias, but also know my place and my boundaries. A time to speak and a time to listen. A time to hold.
Right.
And a time,
What's coming up for me in both of what you share, I'm inspired by some things that both of you shared, is for sure isolation. I mean, for sure, I think sometimes all the news and all the media creates like, I either have to respond right now or don't respond at all, and there's like this sense like we're connected because we're hearing everybody's thoughts and opinions, but then are we spending too much time there and we're not doing this? You know, so is that like a false sense of nourishment and, you know, what's here? And then the other thing is how important self-care sort of plays into all of this. Like if we're, it's always been tumultuous, there's always something going on, but maybe the rate of how these things are happening or what we're being exposed to feels a little bit more intense than normal. So it's like, okay, what is it that I can do to take care of myself so I'm better equipped to take in this information with my biases, right? You know, because we immediately go, oh, you know, and then be there for each other. Because that part, like, that's the part I think I'm most sensitive about, that I know this is important. Like, I know this is important more than ever because of the type of conversations that happen in the comment threads and things, and like, I want to believe in this, and I want to believe that there's a way forward and there's connection. And sometimes when you're reading comments in a social media post, you're like, wow, where have humans gone? Like, it doesn't feel right. So I think that this is where there's opportunity.
Yeah. And I grab onto that. Where have the humans gone? Well, I'm one of those humans.
Yeah.
So what's my part in it? Yeah. And what can I do in a moment or in a group setting? And I think that's one thing that I've experienced. We meet in small groups, call them my groups, and then we also meet on these weekends where there are 60 to 70 men that are participating. And I've always gotten that sense of being less isolated and less in my own individual silo and connected to the greater farm. I don't know. Everybody, yeah.
I mean, and I think there's a piece around knowing, for me, knowing how to respond, and knowing how to show up, knowing what to ask for or what to not ask for. Yeah. To me, I trace that all the way back to my feelings, you know, and I think that you know, this isn't true of everybody, but, you know, for me, 13 years ago when I started doing Mankind Project work, and I'd done a lot of work of like therapy, recovery stuff, all kinds of things, but I still had a hard time isolating what I was feeling and being able to say, oh, this is that thing. And in response to that feeling, maybe I would like this, or maybe I want to ask for that, or maybe I just want to speak to being scared or feeling shame or whatever it is. So I feel like in terms of my own healing day to day, it starts with whatever I'm feeling. It starts with me being able to say, oh, this feels scary to me, or this feels, you know, I feel angry here. So now that I know that, you know, let me sit with that for a moment. And then what's my next step? Is it a phone call? Is it meditation? Is it a walk? Is it a conversation? You know, is it time to go to my men's group and talk about these things? Is it time to go to my therapist and talk about these things? I think for me, like, without that first moment of being able to say, what is it that's going on in here? And I think on some level, you know, I don't have any statistics, but I sort of make up that as a culture, we don't necessarily go to the feelings. You know, we go to the rebuttal, we go to the tweet, we go to the meme, we go to the snappy answer before, you know, I really want to look within first and figure out and gather and, you know, connect with myself and then say, this might be next.
The difference between a reaction and a response. And I think that a lot of the social media is reaction, and conversations are more about what a response could be. I appreciate where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
Well, so let's get back to talking about the Mankind Project and what was the connection for you? Maybe what was the first thing that said, yeah, I want to check this out?
I had a friend who who had done the Mankind Project weekend in New York. We'd been friends for a while, and we used to meet and connect every week to sort of talk about what was going on. And he showed up one week to this meeting, and he said, "I've done this weekend." And it was really amazing. You know, he said it was the best thing that he had done since he was from upstate New York and he'd moved to the city. He said, "It's the best thing I've done since moving to the city." And he couldn't quite describe it. He said it was really powerful and that I should do it. You know, and it just sounded like, what the heck is that? And I listened to him for a while, and he kept talking about it. And then I asked him to stop talking about it, and he kept talking about it. And he sent me to the website, and I took a look. And it seemed, you know, obviously it was a personal growth opportunity. And I was, you know, I was just about to turn 40. And I thought to myself, this might be a good opportunity to take a look at my life. You know, who am I on the planet? What am I up to? What am I doing? And this might be a good way to do it. And even though I didn't know all that much about what would happen when I was there, I talked to my partner about it. He didn't really want to go. I knew I was, in that way, I was on my own. But I decided to take the chance on myself and see what was there that might sort of open up in me. And also, I was willing to, and I'm really proud of myself about this, I was willing to go with the mystery. Like, I really trusted this man who recommended it. I know as a man, I always want to know exactly what, you know, I've got a calendar and everything's scheduled, and I want to know what and when. And I thought, let me let go of that, see what happens. And I kind of haven't looked back. I have to say, I was really skeptical at the beginning because I said to the enrollment guy who I talked to, I'm only going to do the weekend. I know there are other things. I'm not doing any of those other things. I'm not doing the weekly groups. I'm not going to do, you know, 13 years later, here I am.
Still in, huh?
Still in.
Similar, I wasn't looking or shopping, and a friend of mine invited me to a small weekly circle, and I went and I heard these men talking in ways about their lives and their wives and their struggles and whatnot, in a way that I wasn't accustomed to hearing men talk about these things. God, men talk like this? We didn't talk about any sport, no teams, no, just, it wasn't a contest. There was no, oh really? Well, let me tell you what I did. It was real. Yeah. And like I got this sense in my body of this connection to these men who were being honest and what I believe authentically sharing what was going on, and there was something strange about that for me, and I wanted to be more connected to it. I got inspired by what I experienced that night, and I also trusted my friend and didn't want to know anything. He said, the weekends are basically the same, but there's an unfolding and a discovery as the weekend goes on. I said, all right, I don't want to know anything. And I did. I jumped in and have stayed connected in varying levels.
I like in both of your stories, this person that there was a person in your life that you trusted that was having a different type of conversation with you and talking about their experience at the Mankind Project. And that was just enough to like, oh, I like even just this experience of hearing this person talk about it. So that would create the curiosity that ultimately put you there. But like hearing you guys say that these were not normal conversations that you were having as men. You weren't talking about feelings or, talking about sports and stuff, and to have somebody talk about something they experienced as being different and like, hey, this sounds good. Let's do that.
Yeah. But before we got started, you talked about, thirst and hunger.
Yeah.
And I think I had a hunger for something more. And I didn't know what it was. I wasn't talking to people in my life about this sense of lack. But it was a deeper connection, and I would say connection to the masculine, the sacred masculine, I grew up in a house with 6 women and a younger brother, and my dad was around at times and struggled to be emotionally present and was dealing with his own adult life challenges and a marriage that wasn't pretty. So I longed for, even though I couldn't articulate it at the moment, I wanted to be comforted by men, around men, and to learn things in a way with not standing around a bar looking at a screen.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. I understand that.
Yeah.
Do you now, how do I say this? So now you're on the other side. You've experienced it. You're leaders and with the work, and you have conversations with men that have never been to a Mankind Project weekend. They've never experienced any of the workshops. I imagine you're trying to share that with them. When is that opportunity? It's probably a 2-part question. Are there things men are talking about and you're like, oh, that's the thing, I know that they would find comfort, they would find some peace in the work that we're doing, and like, how do I bring this, how do I have this conversation with them? So I guess it's like 2, how do you do it? How do you invite people in? How do you invite people in? And what are men talking about that seem to be the pains, the prominent pains that are not just pains or maybe just experiences, or and the mystery of what else is there that creates an opportunity for them to come in.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know that I'm a firm believer that I don't know what anybody else needs, so I don't really approach it from that perspective specifically. What's key to me is how much I get out of the work.
Yeah.
I can definitely feel if I get to the middle of a week, my weekly men's group meets on Wednesdays. So when I get to that, when it's time to go and I'm ready it's time to sort of drop in and go to that circle and talk about what's going on this week, and I know that that's something that I need, then I'm really thirsty for that.
Yeah.
To sort of extend our metaphor. So I think when I talk to men about the work, it's really for me about what I get out of it. It's like if I have an amazing meal at a restaurant and I'm like, oh, this restaurant, I ordered this and I ordered that and this tasted so good and the service was great. And to me, that's the way I talk about it. And for me, there's an open-endedness to, like with a restaurant or with a movie, like if these things that I'm talking about appeal to you and you'd like to taste that burger or have that service or whatever, then the door is open and I can give you more information about where it is and how to connect. And I just, I think not only do I keep talking about it because it's part of my life, but I also am open to sharing my experience, just like we're doing here, about how this is, and it sounds really dramatic, but how this has like literally changed my life. So I'm happy to talk about that and then allow men to make their own decisions.
Yeah, I'm also big on I can inform and share and let men choose. And also, sharing it, women are great ambassadors for personal growth. I had 2 women that told me about this group in New Jersey before my friend Wayne did. And I looked back and I said, wow, what does that say that I wasn't ready to hear from a woman that maybe a men's circle was open for me? I didn't even consider it when they offered.
I feel that. Part of my initial excitement in hearing about the Mankind Project were some thoughts and feelings towards some friends, male friends, that I think they need something and I know they can't hear it from me. I know that there's no, I can't, so
they might hear it from you, but it might not hit home.
Right, it might not resonate.
It'd be a little like planting a seed, right? Yeah.
Well, thank you for being the ambassador of planting seeds.
Right. Which in some ways is all we can do, right?
Yeah.
Anybody can do.
Yeah.
So back to what we can talk about. Do you want to talk more about some of the things that have profoundly changed you because of this work? That you're like, God, is it still evolving because you're in dialogue with men and you get to go to have the small group experience where you get to share? Like, are there things that just really pop up that like, yeah, this is like profoundly changed my life?
Well, I think about, Michael was talking about how he grew up. I remember, I have an older brother. My parents are retired teachers. And I remember at one point, I think we were having guests or something, and I was really upset about something. I was about 4 or 5, and I was crying. And I remember I don't remember the details, but I said, I was just in this space of, Mom, and my mother said to me, I'll never forget this, and she probably won't remember it, but she said to me, clearly I was sad, but she said, you must be tired, go to bed. And so there was this message that I think I sort of have held on to, which I think is a very masculine message, that whatever those feelings are, shut them down and move on. Look, we don't have time for that. So to me, that's the thing that I think keeps being explored. Like, I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine who's in MKP, about something that was going on in my life, and I was having all this stuff. I was calling him for some sort of counsel, and the first thing he said to me was, what is this bringing up in you? Like, what's going on in you? Like, forget the details.
Yeah.
Like, what does this feel like?
Yeah.
And it was such a great moment of grounding for me to say, oh yeah, it's not about whatever these details are. It's, what am I feeling? I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling angry. And what is that? Where can I trace that back to, or what can I sort of own in that, or what can I release in that with the awareness of it? I don't know, it's not actually magical, but it almost feels like, because I think as a person moving through the world in all of the ways that I do, even, more than a decade into this work, I forget that I can be triggered. I forget that I can be, caught up in some emotional spin that really is about me managing or being aware of or releasing or letting go of something that's in here, rather than trying to wrestle something out there to the ground. And that's, that never gets old for me.
For me as well. I can totally relate to that. I feel like every part of me believes that's the opportunity right now, that like, just account for this. Whatever it is, whatever it is, account for that. And I think there was something really special that you said, like that question that your friend asked, okay, enough about all of that. What are you feeling right now? That's like a really good tool in all of this right now, to kind of stop the chatter up here, the news, and just go, okay, why is this bringing up so much for you? Like, what's that? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and you talk about the social construct, boys, girls, men, women, and I was raised with certain social norms, and what are you feeling today, Michael? Wasn't one of them.
That's right.
Wasn't. And I think that I've seen in the years that I've been involved with the Mankind Project, a lot of the different parts of the weekend are similar to the way they were in 1985, and modifications have been made and language adjustments. But one of the parts of the weekend, we focus on emotional literacy. And I've noticed in 20 years' time that men show up on the weekends now way more tuned in to feeling. Not nearly in the dark ages that maybe some people project where they are. So, that's my experience on the weekends, is that there's some men that are scratching their heads, and other men are, got it, let's move. And, the beauty of the weekend is men move at their own rate.
Right.
And, each man gets to check in around accountability and integrity and finding where he's conscious and unconscious in his life. And based on where he is, what's his personal mission of service in the world. So that, I talked earlier about I'm one man on a planet of billions, and I get to walk through the world impacting everybody I meet. And I don't meet billions of people at a time. I meet people one at a time in your crew, and that's the way it works. And how many, is anybody watching? I don't know, but
they're out there.
Yeah, there's a change, and that's the way it happens.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I like that. I agree with that. And as a woman sitting over here, I'm like, it's kind of hopeful to hear you, even in the time that you have, experienced this work, and the weekends and at the Mankind Project, that there is some evolution, that men are showing up with they have a little bit more capacity for processing emotion or being in touch with it. I love hearing that. I'm pretty excited about that. So that's hopeful.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I think there's a sense of, obviously not everybody knows exactly, I don't know exactly what I don't know, but I think sometimes I'm aware that there's more. And I feel like there are men who show up on the weekend aware that there's more. There's something else. There's some other sort of fabric, some other space to be in. The other thing I think in terms of the evolution of the Mankind Project that I think is super cool is that, it started out with these three guys, and it's an international organization now. It's like you can go to you can do the Mankind Project weekend in Australia and New Zealand. And
when did it start? What year?
1985.
1985.
Yeah, so it's all over the United States. It's all over Europe. It's in Africa. It's in Mexico. They just did a weekend in Israel. Like it's
UK, Canada.
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
It's really great.
Do you know what that tipping point was for those founders in 1985? If they're like, we're gonna do this, like we need to start something. Did they talk about it? Or?
I mean, they certainly were responding to the women's movement. Okay. It was it was sort of like a ping from that, and I think several of the men, if not all of them, were involved or connected to women who were doing their work, and they the three of them got together and said, I think men could use something too, and so how can we begin to create a space where men can begin to sort of touch into these spaces that women are more easily able to talk, to touch into. I mean, I hear so many men talk about in the work, and even on the weekend mention how, if you're out with a group of female friends, or, it's not unusual for a handful of them to go to the restroom together, and in that space.
What? We don't do that.
Never.
I grew up in that house.
Yeah. And in that space, it's really an opportunity for, I imagine, I've done that myself, but for women to connect, go in, and it's not just about going to the restroom, or it's about some conversation. It's about some connection. It's about something that's going on in their hearts. Typically, men don't have that. We don't go to the restroom together. We don't talk about those things that we don't talk about. And so these three guys wanted to create a space where men can drop in. And that's kind of cool.
What's coming up for me in that, I've never thought about it this way, but the opportunity, so women are probably in a group where there's men and women at the table, and women are probably thinking, I don't have an opportunity to talk about my feelings, so I got to take my girlfriends in the bathroom and talk about my feelings. And men are not even invited to talk about their feelings. Right. It's like, so that there's...
Well, they're not allowed in the ladies' room.
Well, you're definitely not allowed in the ladies' room. But to break down that social construct, like, we can talk about it. Like, we can come sit at a table, go, what are you feeling?
Yeah.
What's
and you're socialized to know that that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That that's a space to go.
Yeah. It's funny.
Well, one of the three founders, Bill Kauff, and he admits he spent a lot of time, he wanted to know what was happening culturally, so he hung out with the women. Yeah. The women were doing their work on another level. And all those men had read an article by Robert Black called What Are Men Looking For? And studies had shown how decline in fraternal organizations, men were being less connected, the Industrial Revolution, men were leaving the home, spending more time at work, away from the home. So he told me in an interview back in 2000, he said, and I stood there and I pointed to those women, I said, somebody's got to do something for these men. And I realized that three fingers were pointing back at me. So I knew that I had to be the one to do something. And he also referenced the other founder, Ron Herring and Rich Tosi. Ron is deceased in 1993. Rich Tosi was was in the Marines. And Bill said that Rich brought this fierce brand of authenticity And he said, without that, the New Warrior Training Adventure would have become another soft, new age men's weekend. And he said in 1985, that was the last thing the world needed. So I like to believe that we support men in finding what's true for them. Where's their authenticity? And from that place, claim your power and step back into the relationships you have. New Warrior, with an open heart and a personal mission of service, so that they're not steamrolling simply because they got empowered to roll over people, but to be more conscious with it.
Is that where the statement responsibilities and mature masculinity comes in? So like having this new, I'm gonna let you say it. I don't want to put. I could mirror back what I think I just heard you say is like you kind of come in, you found who you are, you in this program, and you're able to kind of come back and go, this is who I am, and be of some service in those regards. Is that?
Yeah. And I know Steve wants to jump in. A little
I know.
bridge.
I see your name. It's like I got it. I got something to say.
So men, it's a weekend that focuses on masculinity. It's a 45-hour weekend for the men that show up for the first time. There's a limit to how much we can cover. So we focus on the masculine aspect. So men get connected with that, and however that's connected to their power or their purpose or their heart, those are the conduits that we tap into on the weekend. And it's a weekend of choice. When men get to a place of being open and vulnerable, brother, it's your choice. And from that in itself that's empowering.
Yeah, I also think it's a weekend of discovery. A sort of, we talk about, we use words like masculine and feminine, and there are plenty of people who say, well, what is that? And I think one of the great things about MPP is men, it's all about men defining whatever it is for themselves. We talk about some of the bedrocks of authenticity and integrity, emotional literacy, a mission of service. You take those things, those building blocks and other building blocks, and every man who goes on the weekend, constructs whatever their own sacred masculine identity is from these building blocks. And so I think, when we talk about the weekend and men being on the weekend and discovering these things from a masculine space, the context is masculine because there are men doing the work, and yet we don't sit around and define for anybody. The organization doesn't define for anybody what those things ought to be or what they ought to look like. We're in a delightfully inclusive organization. I'm a gay man, and trans men have done our work, and all kinds of men, and also diverse men have done our work. Black men, men of all shades, men with disabilities. There have been weekends that specifically focus on, we call them gateway weekends, where it's the Same Mankind Project weekend that is slightly angled for a specific population. So there are GBTQ weekends. The weekend in Israel was all of those people, or the majority of them, were Jewish. There have been Christian weekends that have been MKP gateways, young warriors, urban weekends. There are all of these things that basically, again, take these same building blocks and allow each of these men to say, oh, with these building blocks, I see this is my vision of who I want to be as a man.
What I'm hearing is like there's this deconstruction of just taking everything apart and then letting an adult person build that back up the way that they want to build that back up is what I'm hearing. It's like you might have been exposed to things that told you this was a certain way, but here's an opportunity to really embrace just you, but
boys, I mean, we all come into the world and we go through the different stages, and we experience pain, we experience fear, we get defensive, we put up shields, we protect ourselves, we block others from hurting us, but yet we also, block the possibility of our heart connecting with others. So what's it take to bring that shield down, that wall? And sometimes it takes a deconstruction. How do we How do we break that stuff down and rebuild it? Do I want to rebuild it? What do I want to rebuild it with?
Mm-hmm.
Do I, you know, who's my construction team? Well, a lot of times on these weekends, you know, there are men from a variety of backgrounds
Mm-hmm.
who pitch in. The weekend is predominantly peer supported. The ongoing I groups are mostly all peer supported. So it's men living their lives, adhering to some of these basic principles, finding ways to support themselves and others in moving through life.
So is it the responsibility of mature masculinity is the awareness of self in the context of things out in the world as well? I mean, how would you?
I think it goes from the, you know, from the small to the large.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the ways we begin to talk about it on the weekend is about being in integrity. So if I say to you, you know, I'm going to be here at the studio at, you know, X hour, and I show up late, I've broken an agreement with you, right? So we start from there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how often am I breaking agreements with people?
Mm-hmm.
And if I am, what's that about? You know, do I think I get a pass? Is there a story I make up? Is there something about, you know, me wanting to be seen in a way that actually isn't healthy?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we invite men to look at all of their choices. Obviously, it's a lot of work because we all make a million choices.
Right.
But from that level,
yeah.
And I think that is obviously like out in the world and impacting the world, and yet it's as small as, you know, what did you promise your dad you would do? What did you promise your wife you would do? What did you promise your husband you would do? And did you show up? And if not, why not? You know, and is there something you can do to bring yourself back in relationship with those who you've broken agreements with?
Mm-hmm. That one totally hits me. I hire, you know, I run a marketing firm, and the one thing that I'll say when I hire someone as a vendor, okay, I'm like, I really appreciate people that have integrity with their word, and I'm gonna give you space for that. So if you say, I need this much time to deliver this work, and I'm not going to impose it on you. You're going to get to say, I need this much time to deliver this work. And then when you miss it, I'm not likely to give you a second chance. Like, that's my big stickler. It's just, it's important to have integrity with my word. And like, I get caught too. It's like I say something, I'm like, you know, you're going to have to commit to that. You did it. You said it. Like, it's important to you. You want this in your world. So,
and as Steve said, there's a reason beneath that,
right?
And that's frequently part of the deconstruction.
Yeah.
And so the reconstruction is about making different choices. And you know, we talk in the work about the shadow and the Jungian concept, the hidden, repressed, and denied, and those are usually unconscious choices made from that realm that lead the brightest men down the darkest alleys, you know?
Yeah, so what an opportunity then to have, you know, any man on a weekend begin to kind of uncover what his shadows are that are running his life. You know, if I'm you know, walking around in the world feeling like I'm less than, and what that results in is I make agreements that I break because I don't think anybody's going to even notice me. And that's running my life. Like, that's an incredible discovery to make on a personal level, to be able to say, oh, I want to keep that out in front of me so that I'm not, you know, messing up my relationships by having that shadow lead my behavior.
Yeah. We're getting close to not having much time, but one thing that I definitely want to talk about, and I'm just going to put it out there, and we're going to talk about it in the way that you guys want to talk about it. So I'm not going to leave this question. Toxic masculinity. Can we talk about that? It's out there.
We can talk about anything.
I mean, you know, personal thoughts. Why we're hearing so much more about it. What can you relate to? I mean, however you want to talk about it let's talk about it.
I think toxicity in relationships. Are you talking about relatable? It's part of that human condition of if I'm not taking care of myself, if I'm not doing my work, if I'm not checking my shadows, I'm going to be carrying toxins. And I happen to be a male. I'm a white male. I've experienced unearned white male privilege, and that term got revealed to me about almost 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And with the article, Peggy McIntosh, I said, wow, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a toxicity if a white male says, I understand if he doesn't get it, it might not be introduced to the term, but if he doesn't want to get it, then I think that's toxic, and I think that's on display on a national level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
There's a space where, I think culturally we're beginning to pull the blanket off that privilege, and for the first time we're willing to say, take a look at this, or this is not right. We're willing to question those behaviors and that kind of entitlement. And I think that's really powerful for us to be doing as a culture. And I also think, though, what ends up happening is once you pull the blanket off, you've got a lot of naked, scared, freaked out people. And part of the question that I think Mankind Project attempts to answer for any man who's willing to step into the work is, there is a space for you, as broken as you are, as frightened as you are, as shamed as you are, as beautiful as you are, no matter who you are. You're welcome in the space of healing that you can discover and learn how to manage and work and lean into. So I think it's a real opportunity in some ways. That kind of blanket pulling off just allows more of us to step into a healthier space, ultimately.
Yeah. You mentioned restorative justice, mediate. Okay, difference. What are the differences, and where are you two willing to meet? What can we do as a group to support that?
Yeah. The challenge for me on that topic is knowing that there are hate groups, like legit hate groups against women that exist in this world right now.
Yeah.
And I'm, to be fair, there's probably there's extent of women doing the same thing, and then we can get into race and everything else. Like the existence of people gathering in hate is, I don't even really know how to process that actually, but but I think that the best way to the hope to address it is that healing is available to anyone at any time, and there are opportunities, and it's why I wanted to reach out to the Mankind Project, because when I see some of that, and I've been in dialogue with people that are associated with certain groups, I couldn't really totally call it a dialogue, but there's been communication, that to just know there's this other side of it too, that at any opportunity, at any given time, the choice of leaning into hate or love are available to all of us, no matter what we've been exposed to in our lives or what we've done personally. It's always there, and I feel like you guys are, the Mankind Project is one of the very few groups that it's even, that I know of, not few, the only one that I know of that actually has an opportunity to welcome people that are leaned into that kind of energy right now.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. I like to believe that on our good days, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want from us, how we might be of service to you and anybody who might be watching? This is you've really warmed up the space.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bless you.
No, my hope and always in doing the show, and I wish, I say it a lot, I wish people could kind of feel how I feel in the space. Like sometimes I get all the goosebumps, but I really believe in this. I really believe, even if this topic is vulnerable for me and I look vulnerable, and I've had, people will comment, she's very awkward. And it's like, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. This matters. Like, and it seems so, it doesn't seem important when people are, oh, we got to go out and be activists. We've got to, to many, but I feel it's really important. And I just encourage more of that, that it doesn't have to be difficult to sit down and have a conversation. In our case, I didn't think that we would have a lot of things that were going to be in conflict. But even if there's opportunity for that conversation to take place without it being a debate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, no, I mean, I appreciate you asking the question. But I can't think, there's nothing, is there anything that we haven't talked about? I mean, I'd like maybe to hear just general hopes, like, because you guys are in a unique position to be in community with men that are experiencing pain, that are have a willingness to grow, and you're experiencing the news alongside with me. And what are just your general thoughts around where we are right now in today's society, in today's world, and like what's the hope there?
I think for me, the hope is for healing. The hope is for civil conversation. The hope is for people meeting on a heart basis, mm-hmm. and being willing to be in space together and to see each other with respect and love in spite of differences. Mm-hmm. I think it's a real opportunity, and I feel like it's the kind of opportunity that we're taking by having a conversation with you, mm-hmm. and that I think we can all do every day. And certainly, I think as you talk about toxic feelings, you got to protect yourself.
Yeah.
You can't be in conversation with everybody all the time.
Yeah.
And yet conversation is an opportunity.
Yeah, that's a really important point, actually, because there are times that you're like, not there, me. And that's a thing that, this is, I think, where most of my learning is coming from right now in my space is like, say I, say me, say, don't try to speak up for everybody else.
Which is empowering in itself, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's weird though. Like it's like trying on a dress.
But in this medium too, I think, talk radio. It's the realm of we, mm-hmm. and you statements.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you are in a position where you're speaking to and for the masses.
Yeah.
And nothing is empowering is making an I statement. I'll turn it off like you're not speaking for me.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's happening too. I mean, when I see language around, I'll tell you something that happened this weekend that you guys probably don't know about. That I got a message in my inbox on Facebook, a iMessage from several different women that had blacked out their profile and said, I wish I had my phone right here. This is the one time I wish I had my phone. That said, let's let men know how it's going to look in the world without us. I'm like, what the hell does that solve? Like, it was just like the point was there, but it was just like, really, that's what we're going to do? We're going to like, and it was this is what we as women need to do. And I was like, I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling that at all. I'm not at all feeling that one, like it just didn't. So that like, that's that focus, it's weird. I do a digital media show and I'm kind of like poo-pooing social media a lot. And I think everything, I think technology is great. I think social media is value neutral. I think this stuff is value neutral. We have to be aware that there's pluses and minuses, but it just makes this more important than ever, to kind of process that out. And I don't want to hear somebody tell me, we as a woman, this is what I need to do. And I would rather, with the women that sent that to me, have been in dialogue around, well, what else can we do here? Like, I mean, I'd like to make a choice here, like, but I'm not doing that.
Or this is what came up for me.
Yeah.
Can you help me? Can you help me process this?
Yeah.
Right.
I got triggered.
Yeah.
I want to do something violent, but I know that really won't serve the greater good.
Yeah.
It'll make a dark world a little darker.
Yeah.
What can I do?
Yeah.
So, yeah. You got your mission.
Yeah.
We're so every time I look over, he's just got this great, awesome smile. He's like, I'm going to keep us here.
I look to the rock.
It's the pillow. It's your amazing pillow that just grounds me.
It's
so
awesome.
I frequently reference when I first did the training adventure, a personal mission of service, which currently for me is I co-create a joyful, safe, and trusting world by authentically and creatively expressing myself. So each man that participates in a weekend gets to construct one of those that fits for him. So mine has evolved over the years, and I reference it. How can I show up? What might I do? I say, well, if I'm operating from this place, this is my MO, what can I do today to realize, to be on mission? And that frequently helps me. Say, what do you do and what do you hope for? Well, that's the kind of world that I hope for.
Mine is, I create a world of inspiration and abundance by leading and mentoring from the heart. Grounds me.
I can see that. I'm feeling it here.
And the fish pillow.
And the fish pillow.
Yeah.
Should never leave home with that.
That is awesome. I think that's a good place to hold this conversation, and we can have continued conversation. I hope people.
One other quick. I'm thinking of like in the the micro and the macro, and here we are, and it's in our space and what's happening this week and nationally, and like at the same time, an earthquake and a tsunami happened in another part of the world that's way down on the list, and I acknowledge that there's a lot going on in the world.
That's right.
That in all the drama and the trauma of what's happening here in this country, a part of the world has been heavily impacted in the last few days, and the privilege that I have to not be pulled off my center because of something so dramatic as that. So that's, for me, that's real too.
I'm glad that you brought that up. There's something, I don't know what the solution is around this either, too, how one news story has to be predominant, and this is our culture, right? This is American culture, why it has to be so predominantly, this is everything that you're going to be fed to. I mean, I know part of it because I'm a marketer. It's all about ratings and views, and it's like, oh, everybody's still looking for this. Everybody's still Googling Trump or Kavanaugh, so let's put more out there and let's recycle the headline, and and yes, and on top of that, there are really big things going on. We're not even talking about it. We don't care. We're so desensitized because this is the one that's like in the inbox. I don't know what the solution is for that. I do feel this is a whole another ball game in terms of what we're fed in terms of media and news. And the only thing that I can kind of slightly kind of come up with is, check it one time, have a built-in opportunity to sit down with somebody and talk about, maybe you only look at the news before you go to your Wednesday group, something that keeps you able to be aware and be able to tune into the things that are important to you, and you can take action if you want to, but also an opportunity to like process where that trauma ends up getting stored. Like what do I do with that? Because that system is not going to provide solutions for that. They're not going to go, oh, we realize our the way that we force media onto you and your apps is really unhealthy and addictive. Like we should do something about that. No.
Thanks for letting me jump in.
That was important. I'm glad that you did. That was really important. Okay, so we get to do two more things together.
Cool. In
the time that we're together, and it does change. It will shift how we're relating, and that's a point that I like to make too. That at any given time, we have the opportunity to do that when we're in dialogue. Things get too heavy, we can have a joke between whatever we need to do, but we can change how we're relating. We have the power to do so, and sometimes we need to. And so in this case, what we get to do, two things. So I always try to issue some sort of social challenge of the week. That's just an opportunity for for people that are watching to try something different, to like learn a little bit about themselves. It might be a journaling. It might have, be willing to ask a different question when you encounter people. Could be anything. I don't have anything that's coming up, but I always can pull something. But do you have any thoughts around like what would be a nice little thing that we can put out together. Like,
Yeah.
try this week.
I tweet a bit, and
I'm a light tweeter.
I'm a light tweeter. But what I love is when I tweet something positive, it makes an amazing ripple in the pond. So that's kind of always my challenge. Like, tweet about gratitude. Like, what are you grateful for? And are you willing to put that out in social media? Are you willing to put that out in the world? Because I think people really respond to it, and it's fun to do.
Yeah, I'm feeling that.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, Michael?
My next tweet will be my first.
It probably won't happen. It's all right. It's all right.
Can I pass on the social,
the
social stretch?
Yeah.
Social media stretch.
Yeah. So if you're not on well, how about we just play off that and say with each other, say I'm really grateful. We did this before we started the show today. We shared what we're grateful for. Maybe inviting people into conversation around what they're grateful for. Does that feel better?
Cool.
Yeah. So, okay, that's our social. So our social challenge of the week is leaning into gratefulness and stating what you're grateful for. If you want to do that via a social media platform, that's totally cool. And if you want to do that one-on-one in at work or at home, that's great too. So that's the social challenge of the week. And just last thing, because I think this is really important right now too. So I always invite the guests to give a heart swell. And what a heart swell is just an opportunity to give someone a shout out, say, hey, you mean the world to me, you've taught me something, I'm really feeling you right now. It could be a group of people, it could be a person, it could be somebody you don't know. The whole point is, hey, it's not too hard to do this. Like, and we probably should be doing this more, especially right now. So are you both willing to give a heart swell?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay.
Wayne and Barbara for inviting me to the circle and 23 years ago, and John Levitt for always being there as a loyal and trusted friend.
Awesome.
Mine is to my dad, whose birthday it is today.
Woo-hoo. Shout
And 86. And just, I love you. So shout out to you.
Awesome. All right. Well, that does bring us
You
to.
got one?
I love this. See, this got conversation.
Right?
I love it. I could always do a heart swell. I have a couple. My mom's coming to visit me for the first time without my stepfather. Not that that's not great too, but just feeling like it needs mom time, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm really grateful for B, that's on the other side of the camera, because we have been in some very serious, intense conversations in this space, and really meaningful, and that I can't even look at her. I can't even look at that direction.
It's beautiful.
Super meaningful, and that she's given me the space, because sometimes I've just been ranting like a crazy person, and she's just listened and has thoughtfully added input into a lot of those things. So I'm really grateful for it. I can't look at it right now. I can't.
There you go.
Like that.
There you go. There she is.
Yeah. So those two people, and you know, you guys, I'm really happy that we did this today. It was really a good thing to do.
Really good.
So that brings us to the end of the show. These tears are real. Next week, so we've already recorded next week's show, parts of it. And this is with a new friend. This is Dr. Rupal Deep Gill, who he couldn't be here on a Tuesday at 11 because he's a teacher, he's a professor. And he actually called me that morning and said, because it was during it was Friday, and it was during the heat of the conversation where they're going to pass Brett through as our new Supreme Court judge. And so we were here in this room at that time, and he had called and said, I don't know if I can do this right now. And I was like, I'm kind of feeling that too. I don't know if I can do this right now. And we talked a lot off camera, and then we let the camera roll, and we weren't sure really what was on camera, and we both looked at it and said, okay, yeah, we'll put that out. So that's next week. You'll get to see that conversation. And now you have the context of like how that conversation took place. So that's that. As always, I'm just gonna encourage guys. It's painfully obvious right now how much just this little act of curiosity could help us through some of the things that we're experiencing. So I'm going to say, as I always do, relate with more curiosity. See you next week.